You ever wonder what the difference between a 38-55 Winchester and a 375 Winchester is? Well, let's see if we can find out today. Our first rifle here is a Winchester, model 1894 in 38-55 Winchester. This is a new production rifle, one of the Japanese manufactured, and it is a very fine shooting rifle. The next is a Winchester big bore model 94 XTR in 375 Winchester. This rifle was purchased around 1980. Our third rifle is a Marlin model 375S in 375 Winchester. Ammunition I have to try out, I have this factory loaded Winchester 38-55 Winchester 255 grain soft point. Winchester's website advertises this of having a muzzle velocity of 1,320 feet per second. The next is this buffalo bore heavy 38-55 Winchester 255 grain jacketed flat nose bonded core with an advertised muzzle velocity of 1,950 feet per second. For the 375 ammunition, I have this factory loaded Winchester 200 grain power point with an advertised muzzle velocity of 2,200 feet per second. And I have this buffalo bore heavy 375 Winchester 255 grain jacketed flat nose with an advertised muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second. Here's our two Winchester factory loads side by side. The one on my left is the 38-55. The one on my right is the 375 200 grain. Here's our two buffalo bore cartridges side by side. The one on my left is the 38-55 255 grain, and the one on my right is the heavy 375 Winchester 255 grain. The 38-55 was introduced around 1884 by Marlin for their Ballard rifle, according to Hornady's handload book. And the 375 Winchester came out in about 1978. There isn't but about 65 thousandths difference between these two cartridges, with the 375 being shorter than the 38-55. The 375 operates at higher pressures than the 38-55 does. So let's get to shooting and see what the difference is. Before we get started shooting velocities, I am going to say that I'm going to be firing 38-55 Winchester ammunition out of these 375 Winchester chambered rifles also for velocities. I am not going to fire 375 Winchester ammunition in my 38-55. I'm not going to be shooting for any groups because this factory ammunition that I've purchased does not shoot anywhere close to what my hand loads do that I have worked up for these three rifles. And we're just going to be checking velocities and comparing 38-55 Winchester velocities. First up are 38-55 Winchester factory loads, advertised muzzle velocity of 1,320 feet per second, 255 grain soft point. Winchester 255 grain soft point, advertised muzzle velocity of 1,320 feet per second. See how close it is. Eleven 130.5 feet per second. (1,083.7 feet per second). And 1,015.4 feet per second. So we're quite a bit off the factory advertised velocities here. Let's try the buffalo bore and see what the difference is. Next up is our heavy buffalo bore 38-55 Winchester, 255 grain jacketed flat nose bonded core, advertised muzzle velocity of 1,950 feet per second. Let's try the buffalo bore heavy 38-55 Winchester, 255 grain flat nose bonded core, advertised velocity of 1,950 feet per second. So let's see what we come up with here. (2,027.5 feet per second. It's quite a bit of a increased velocity. And you can also feel it in the recoil of the rifle too. 2,050 feet per second. And number 3, (2,060). Next is our 375 Winchester out of our Marlin 375S, 200 grain power point, factory loads, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,200 feet per second. 375 Winchester, 200 grain, Winchester power point, advertised muzzle velocity 2,200 feet per second. So let's see what we come up with. (1,982.4 feet per second. (1,973.6 feet per second. And 1,934.2 feet per second. Now let's see what the buffalo bore 375 Winchester velocities are. Next up, out of our Marlin 375S is our buffalo bore heavy 375 Winchester, 255 grain jacketed flat nose, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second. Now let's see what we get with the buffalo bore heavy 375 Winchester, 255 grain jacketed flat nose, advertised muzzle velocity 2,000 feet per second. (1,784.2 feet per second. (1,776.3 feet per second. (1,817.0 feet per second. Next, out of our Marlin 375S, I'm going to fire some of this heavy 3855 buffalo bore, 255 grain jacketed flat nose, advertised muzzle velocity of 1,950 feet per second. Let's try some of this 3855 Winchester buffalo bore ammunition out of this Marlin 375 Winchester and see if there's any velocity difference between it and the Winchester 94. (1,828.1 feet per second. (1,818.2 feet per second. And 1,844.3 feet. Next, we're going to try the Winchester big bore model 94 375 Winchester with these 200 grain Winchester factory power points, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,200 feet per second. Winchester 200 grain power point 375 Winchester, Winchester big bore model 94. has an advertised muzzle velocity of 2,200 feet per second. Let's see what we get. (2,063.4 feet per second). (2,043.1 feet per second). And 2,042.6 feet per second. Now, let's try the buffalo bore 375 Winchester load and see what the velocities are on this one. Next, out of our Winchester big bore 94 375 Winchester is this buffalo bore heavy 375 Winchester 255 grain jacketed flat nose, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second. Heavy 375 Winchester buffalo bore 255 grain jacketed flat nose, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second. Out of the Winchester big bore model 94. (1,900, 4.2 feet per second). (1,887.5 feet per second). And number 3, 1,882.8 feet per second. Now, let's see what we get with the 3855 buffalo bore ammo out of this big bore 94 Winchester. Next, out of our Winchester big bore model 94 375 Winchester, try this buffalo bore heavy 3855 Winchester 255 grain jacketed flat nose bonded core, advertised muzzle velocity of 1,950 feet per second. 1,825.8 feet per second. (1,850.2 feet per second). And number 3, 1,845.9 feet per second. And here's our velocities from our 3 shots that we fired. Our Winchester model 94 3855 with 20-inch barrel. Our 255 grain soft point Winchester factory loads, advertised muzzle velocity of 1,320 feet per second. Our actual velocity was 1,109.9 feet per second. That's a loss of 210.1 feet per second. Our average kinetic energy was 697.6 foot-pounds of energy. Our buffalo bore, 255 grain jacketed flat nose bonded core, advertised muzzle velocity of 1,950 feet per second. Our actual muzzle velocity that we got was 2,048.5 feet per second average. That's a gain of 98.5 feet per second. Our kinetic energy average was 2,375.9 foot-pounds. Moving over to our Marlin, model 375S, 20-inch barrel. Our factory load Winchester 375, 200 grain, power points, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,200 feet per second. Our actual muzzle velocity was 1,963.4 feet per second. It's a loss of 236.6 feet per second. Our average kinetic energy was 1,711.8 foot-pounds. Our buffalo bore 255 grain 375 Winchester jacketed flat nose, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second. Our actual velocity that we got was 1,792.5 feet per second, loss of 207.5 feet per second. Our average kinetic energy was 1,819.2 foot-pounds. Our buffalo bore, 255 grain, jacketed bonded core, 3855 Winchester ammunition, advertised muzzle velocity of 1,950 feet per second. Our actual velocity was 1,830.2 feet per second. That's a loss of 119.8 feet per second, with an average kinetic energy of 1,896.3 foot-pounds. Moving on to our Winchester Big Bore 94, 375 with a 20-inch barrel. Our 375 Winchester factory ammunition, PowerPoint, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,200 feet per second. Our actual velocity was 2,049.7 feet per second, loss of 150.3 feet per second. Our average kinetic energy was 1,865.5 foot-pounds. Now, our buffalo bore, 375 Winchester, 255 grain jacketed flat nose, advertised muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second. Actual velocity was 1,891.5 feet per second. It's a loss of 108.5 feet per second. Our average kinetic energy was 2,025.5 foot-pounds. The buffalo bore, 3855, 255 grain jacketed bonded core, advertised velocity of 1,950 feet per second. Our actual velocity was 1,840.7 feet per second, a loss of 109.3 feet per second, with an average kinetic energy of 1,918.1 foot-pounds. Well, I may have caused more confusion than clarification with this video. With the original 3855 Winchester factory loads, they operate around 30,000 CUPs, while the 375 Winchester was designed to run around 52,000 CUPs. There is a significantly greater advantage to having the 375 Winchester, around 853 feet per second faster. But when we come into our buffalo bore, the buffalo bore 3855 ammunition fired in the new production Winchester Model 94, chambered in 3855, was only 1.2 feet per second slower than our fastest 200 grain 375 Winchester factory ammunition. With the buffalo bore 3855 ammunition averaging 2,048.5 feet per second, while our factory load 375 Winchester ammunition averaged 2,049.7 feet per second. Now, buffalo bore advertises they uses a .377 diameter bullet that is operating at around only 38,000 CUPs. The difference between the Marlin 375 Winchester and the Winchester Big Bore Model 94 chambered in 375 Winchester, with the factory 375 Winchester 200 grain ammunition, we were 86.3 feet per second faster when fired out of this old Big Bore Model 94 375 Winchester than we were out of this Marlin 375 Winchester. With our 255 grain buffalo bore 375 Winchester ammunition, we were 99 feet per second faster when fired from this Winchester Big Bore Model 94 chambered in 375 Winchester than we were from this Marlin chambered in 375 Winchester. Now, when we fired our 3855 Winchester buffalo bore ammunition from our 375 chambered rifles, we were 218 feet per second faster out of this new production Model 94 Winchester than we were out of the Marlin in 375 Winchester. And we were 207 feet per second faster out of the new production Model 94 in 3855 than we were out of this Big Bore Model 94 chambered in 375 Winchester. If you have a 3855 and you're not sure what ammunition to shoot, go talk to a gunsmith or contact one of the ammo manufacturers. They'll be more than happy to help you. If you've got a 375 Winchester and you're having trouble finding ammunition, or you don't want to shoot the 3855 Winchester ammo out of it, and you hand load, Starline has a lot of brass now, and of course Buffalo Bore, they make ammo for it too. Hey, I appreciate y'all watching my videos. I learned a lot with this one, and I hope you did too. Y'all have a great day.